You touched a bit upon it, but maybe start from a little further back and tell us a bit about your career so
little
far.
further back, born in 1984.
You don't have to go that far back.
So let me start from the point of where I knew what I wanted to do in life.
Okay.
It was primary school in Thika, and I was always fascinated by airplanes. Every time aircraft would pass over, I would just be fascinated, stop what I'm doing, and look up at that. My dad was in the military, and because of that, he was pushing me towards being a fighter pilot. So at that young age, I knew I was going to be a fighter pilot. I went and saw the aircraft, never flew in one, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. Because of that, I wanted to join a high school that had aviation as a subject. I think there was only 2 then in Kenya, so I joined Mangu for that specific reason.
Okay.
So I did aviation in high school, which I think gave me a head start over my peers or other people who maybe just start in uni. And then just when I finished high school, my family moved to New York because of my dad's job. So it made sense to then continue and find an aviation school. So I went to Vaughan College of Aeronautics, and I had a choice between flying and engineering because there was a fighter pilot in me, but then I still wanted to do engineering because my dad is an engineer.
Okay.
But what made me choose one or the other was that my first flight ever was to Germany because I studied German as well. And it was the worst turbulence I've ever experienced to date. So when I was going to choose a subject, flying or engineering, I just remembered that turbulence. I was like, I can't do that every day. So went into engineering, and at Vaughan, what they would do is you would do a bachelor's degree, but part of it would be attaining your FAA license for engineering. So I studied, it's called aeronautical engineering, but it's more airplane mechanic license. Finished that and then continued to do my bachelor's in aviation maintenance management. While I was doing that, I wanted to have exposure to the airport and aviation environment. So I got a job doing ground handling, which is, lifting these bags and driving the tags and directing the aircraft when they're coming to park. So I was in the space that I needed to be in as much as I hadn't graduated yet. I would interact with engineers and ask questions, which helped me with my studies as well. So I did that for 2 years, graduated, but then I started to feel the need to go back home. Because when I was in Mangu, we went to Kenya Airways for a field trip. And we saw the hangar, we saw the A330s. So that trip was always in my mind, like I would work here one day. So decided to go back home. Remember, I left Kenya just after high school. So I pretty much grew up in the US because Kenya was always living at home or in boarding school. So I didn't even know how to interact with people before I left Kenya. So I was going back home to a place that I didn't really understand. I didn't know if I would get a job. I didn't know who of my friends would still be there. So it took me a whole year to actually get an opportunity. And during the whole year, I was almost regretting why I went back home to Kenya. With my qualifications, with my licensing, with my work experience that I had. So coming back, I thought it would be easy because I had a nice CV. But then it was a year of struggling and wondering, should I just go back to the US? So that was my first experience, as you say, the push and pull of, do you want to be home or do you want to grow and be abroad and make something out of yourself? Eventually, I took an internship at Kenya Airways in the hangar. So working on engines and on light checks mostly, daily checks, weekly checks, and A-checks for 3 months, because my idea was I can't get a job, but if I can be in the building, even as an intern with all my qualifications and eating humble pie, I would be in there, I would meet people and get opportunities. I could show my skills. Yeah. So eventually I got my first job as a planning engineer, which I did for 5 years. Following that, I was involved in redelivery projects, which took me to Ireland for 6 months. So again, that was almost in a way me leaving home again, because it opened up my eyes to, okay, airline is not all about, or aviation is not all about Kenya and Nairobi. You can do different things. There's people called leasing companies that I now learned about, MROs that I learned about. So again, it puts another seed in my head that this could be growth as well.
Yeah.
Immediately after that, I joined fleet development under Andrew Mudachi, who was the best boss ever. That's for the camera.
I didn't pay him to say that.
But that was also, it was to deal with taking delivery of aircraft for the airline, which as soon as I joined, immediately we were going to Seattle, being exposed to Boeing, so again, planting more seeds of there's more to my career that could be than just airline. Which I didn't know that it would lead me to where I am today, but I think that was part of the beginning of my current role in the company I work for. So did that for, I believe, 9 years, 2014 to 2023, because I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the job, the exposure it gave me, the travel it gave me, the interactions, and also the salary, because it was growth from when I joined the airline to that point. But then at some point, I started to feel I wasn't growing anymore. I started to feel frustrated by the people I worked with. So all my experiences of leaving the country before, whether permanently or due to work, gave me the reassurance that I can seek opportunities outside of Kenya and outside of Kenya Airways. So that's why I was confident enough to start looking for jobs and thinking, okay, Middle East could work because it's close to home. It's still in aviation. So for me, I would say it wasn't haphazard, just up and leave. It happened over time. It was to do with my upbringing, my exposure. So I would say most people I know, my friends, just left haphazardly. Maybe it was money that was offered, a new role that was offered. But for me, I think it was part of my journey. And to summarize it, the 2 times I've left home have all been about growth. When I was going to the US to study, it was for exposure, for growth. This second time also, it was for exposure and growth and to enjoy. I enjoyed the small world we live in.